Peter Standish, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Warner Brothers Records. We're in Burbank, California, where Warner Brothers and Reprise Records are based. Make shit happen. That's how I describe my job. If you really drill down to the core of it, it's make things happen. I think that you have to be more than just a coordinator. You have to be on the front line of making things happen, proactively, aggressively, making things happen for your artists. Because if you don't, a terrible thing happens. Nothing. The biggest challenge is getting to the consumers in a cost-effective manner. I think the music business, we don't deal in the economies of scale that most consumer products do. We don't have budgets like most. There are a few things that have smaller budgets than we do. Certainly the film industry has much bigger budgets. So it's about efficiency, really, and being smart, and it's becoming even more so every day. So it's getting the music heard, stimulating demand, creating awareness of your artist. Music videos are, it's interesting. That's changing too. It's we've been in a phase where it's been the amount of exposure for music videos has been really limited the last number of years because MTV plays few videos, certainly relative to the amount that are released, very few, and so the opportunities at least in the United States have been limited there. But you have new outlets that are popping up now. With MTV and VH1 having limited outlets, and then obviously MTV has become much more of a lifestyle channel, and their music programming is not as big as it was when it started. And so you have other outlets like MTV2, Fuse. Now MTV started MTVU, which is another outlet. So there's other outlets out there, but I don't think it's as the market's more complex now than it was, where you used to just go get a track on the radio and get a video played. And as difficult as that might have been, that was also pretty straightforward. Today it's a lot more complicated than that. It's more of a mix and a blend, and and it varies from artist to artist. Some artists would be more radio and video dependent, while other ones would be more television. And let's say touring. That's actually another big area that I left out before. Important area of artist development. There's certain things that don't fall under a department. Well, actually, almost everything does now. But and I often find when things start, they don't fit in a department. Like when the internet first started, there was no internet department. So who dealt with it? Well, at first at this label, and I think others, it was the marketing department. So a lot of sort of miscellaneous and new things often come under the umbrella of marketing. But it depends on the company. This company, when alternative radio started, it just depended on the circumstances of the company. Right, at this company, there was a really talented guy here, Craig Kostic, who ran the dance department, and he saw the value in the alternative and college radio, and so he said, well, I'll run it out of my department. And so when I first started here, I did radio promotion, and it was in what was called then the contemporary music department, and then eventually that radio promotion got moved over to the general radio umbrella. But things sort of grow out of different areas depending upon, I think, the passion that people have within that company, really. If there's an individual who really sees it and seizes upon it, says, I'll come on over here, I'll take it on, Same thing with the web. When I started here, Jeff Gold had a real passion for the internet, and he said, well, here, we see the value in it. We'll hire one guy, who online was known as Max Warner, Todd Steinman, to take it on. And then, and then eventually people start to see the value of it, and then you can justify having a full-time dedicated one person for that area, and then as that grows further, then two people, and then you build a department. I would consider my start the first week of college, when I was in college at the University of San Francisco, and somebody I met on campus, we had a mutual interest in music, and he said, you ought to come down to the radio station and be a DJ down here. And I said, I can't do that. And he goes, why not? And I said, okay, that sounds exciting. The more I thought about it, the more it excited me. And then I went in there, and my life has never been the same since, really. This is at a time when, this is before the internet. So college radio really was filling the void that I think the internet's really stolen a lot of the thunder from college radio, as far as an avenue for experimentation and exploration and taking chances and exposing new music. And so that's what college radio was doing at the time, and so it was really exciting. And so that was my start, and that was really the beginning. There was an opportunity where some people, they needed someone to be the program director of the station, and a couple of people at the station drafted me and came to me and said, what, will you become the program director? And I thought, I'm not going to do that. And they said, please, you could do it. You'd be great. And so then I thought about it, and I went, okay. And so I went for it and got the job. This was at KUSF in San Francisco. And at the time, we were just an AM station. And then we were in a position we needed to increase our hours. And so in order to keep our license with the FCC, we used to sign off the air. The station did before I was working there. And so the only way they could increase the hours was they had no budget to hire people to come on and fill programming. So the only way they could quickly increase hours was to get some volunteers. And the only way they could get volunteers was to say, you can do whatever you want. So we sort of created this loose format of what we call an alternative radio format. And when I say format, we just brought some continuity to it. We tried to it was loosely programmed so that we could create some familiarity, but not overdo it, where people felt like it sounded like a commercial radio station. And so that's what we did, and we had a strong signal in the city of San Francisco. And this was in 1979, 1980, and there was this little scene called punk rock that was exploding in San Francisco at the time, beyond belief. And so there was just this gigantic void in the marketplace. I mean, this was the biggest music explosion in San Francisco since the 60s. And I mean, the punk scene there was thriving beyond belief. And consequently, bands from other cities, this was like one of the major destinations, with San Francisco. So there was just a big void there, and we filled it. And that's marketing, in my opinion, is filling the void. And that's a big part of marketing. And so that was my big, and so the station exploded, and to be there and be a part of that was a big break for me. And there was a lot of really talented people there who made it happen, and we really just and then we marketed ourselves in the city of San Francisco and did things that college stations never did. Sort of acted like we were a mini commercial station, even though we weren't. And so consequently, people started to discover us. Bill Graham Presents went, this little station can sell tickets to the Jam or to the Clash, and let's give away tickets through this little station. This little station, let's have them present the first U2 concert in San Francisco at the old Waldorf. So that's what we did. KUSF Presents. I still have a flyer with Romeo Void opening, and we would get these weird bands that nobody else would want in the city of San Francisco. We interviewed U2 on the campus, and so that was a big break for me, because then the record label started to discover us, right? And so really what then we discovered is that we were in the music business, even though we were at a college radio station, we weren't in the heart of the business, but we were in the thriving, new, exciting part of it. And so that got me, I started to build relationships with a lot of different people at labels and promoters, and then the other big thing was going to a lot of the conventions. I would go to a lot of the college radio conventions and meet a lot of people that way, and so then I built those relationships up. And then my senior year, for my internship, there was a required internship, and I went to go work at a trade magazine that existed at the time called the Gavin Report. That was a leading radio trade magazine, and so then I went and with them started the first weekly alternative radio chart in the business. I saw that there was a big void there. Nobody else was doing it. CMJ was the only college radio publication, but they were published every 2 weeks. Nobody was doing it weekly. So I said, okay, let's do it weekly. We're a weekly publication. Let's just add in. And the other thing was I felt like we were. People felt like CMJ had too many stations that really didn't have much of an impact. So I said, I'm going to cherry pick just the biggest stations so that this chart represents the music that's really making an impact in the United States. And so I cherry picked the biggest stations and created this criteria for stations to become a reporter. And so it was a small list, but it was what I felt the cream of the crop. And so then I graduated from school, and the Gavin Report, I was just working there part-time. They offered me like 1 or 2 days a week, and so I struggled there for a while, and then eventually, to make a long story short, they hired me on full-time a few years later. I had to go back to doing what I did before I went to college, which was painting houses. And so I was painting houses, working at the Gavin part-time. And then actually, I went and got a job once a week working at a local commercial station, commercial alternative station, one of the first in the country after K-Rock, of course, in Los Angeles, called The Quake, that Rick Carroll, who had started the K-Rock format, was consulting. And actually, I got to know Rick through the Gavin Report, and worked there once a week, was working at the Gavin 1 or 2 days a week, and painting houses a few days a week, 3 days a week to pay the rent, and wondering why I went to college. I thought I was going to have this great job when I got out of college, and but eventually I worked my way into a full-time job at the Gavin Report and worked there for 8 years, and then had an opportunity to come to work at Warner Brothers Reprise Records in 1989 to be their head of alternative promotion, radio promotion, and so I took that opportunity and did that for a few years, and then moved into marketing in the early 90s, and have been doing that here at Warner. Done it for Warner Brothers exclusively, and then I did it for Warner and Reprise. I've reinvented myself a number of times, so now currently marketing Warner and Reprise artists. So that's kind of my career story there, I think. And the only thing I left out was, I guess it was around my senior year. When I was in college, I worked in retail as well as a shift manager at a retailer up in San Francisco, which was a really good experience. Certainly the business is completely different than it was when I started, but there's basic fundamentals that are timeless, and you learn a lot about those things just through experience, and having experience working with great people is really important, because that's who you're learning from, and I think that's made a big difference in terms of my career, and yeah, even painting houses was I learned a lot there. And I had my own business, so when you have your own business, you learn a lot about how to get things done, I think painting houses, I learned a lot about paying attention to detail, and how, if you do a really clean, good job, you step back and you'll go, man, that looks good. You won't know why, You know, someone won't articulate like, well, you know, you really did a clean cut there of painting that trim and you didn't spill it onto the edge of the wall. They'll just say it looks good. And if you did a crappy job and there's paint speckles, they won't say, you know, you got paint speckles there and you missed the trim. They'll just say, that doesn't look good. And I think the same thing applies to a marketing plan, you know. If you really pay attention to the detail and really drill down deep and follow through aggressively, people will go, hey, that's a good plan, you know, or that worked out really well. You know, what did you do? You know, and if you don't, they'll be like, that was crap, you know, that didn't work out. And so I think everything, you know, you can take away something from everything if you think about it, you know, and so, yeah, that experience was, all of it was really valuable. You know, I think being dropped into the music business very early while I was in college was really, really valuable. I think one of the most valuable things that I did, and I think applies to anybody today, was I got practical experience in the music business when I was a freshman in college. I didn't wait till my senior year to get that practical experience. And I think that's really important for people who are looking to get into the business and wondering how to do that. I think that I have interns here on a regular basis, and I spend time with all of them periodically. I mean, I don't have time to sit down with them day in and day out. It's not practical, but I also know I never forget my intern experience, you know, and I want them to try to get as much from that as possible. And I also make a point of talking to them at the beginning, you know, really sitting down with them thoroughly at the beginning, and same thing at the end. And I think that what I say to them is get practical experience while you're still in college. Don't wait till you're out of college then to start to get the experience. I think that the smartest thing you can do is to get a well-rounded education and get the really important fundamentals covered in college, and then shore that up with some really hands-on practical experience in an area that you think you might have an interest in as a career. You don't know. Don't feel like you have to know what you want to do, because even if you do know, it's going to change anyway. But I think the most important thing in that time frame is to experiment with things that you think you might want to do as a career and get a feel for it. You know, I think even if you learn you don't want to do something, that was a valuable experience. And so I think it's important to try a bunch of different things. And if you latch on to something that you happen to like, well, then really run with that, you know. And that's what worked out for me. I had one intern here once who left the internship because they said that they wanted to go get a job, a paying job, where they could make car payments, because they couldn't make their car payments for their new car. And I just thought, like, well, you're not that serious about your career, you know, if making car payments is more important to you. I mean, I drove the biggest rust bucket for years. I mean, until right before I moved down here, even when I was at the Gavin Report. But particularly in college. I mean, this was a college student. And I didn't get paid for my time at the college radio station, and I borrowed money to go to school. And I think, you know, I could have gone out and worked and gotten a job and not put in the time at KUSF those summers. I remember those 2 or 3 summers, like my sophomore and junior years, and, you know, other friends might be like taking off to go all over the place. And not that I didn't take a fair amount of time off either, but I still maintain my tie at KUSF. Like, that was like a job to me, even though I wasn't being paid, because I really enjoyed it. But the experience I was getting was invaluable, you know. And so I think, you know, what I say to interns is like, and so that intern left, and that person went and got a job at a bank to make money, to make their car payment. And so what I say to people is, if you want to go work in a bank, and there's nothing wrong with working in a bank, that can be great. Lots of people love that. That's a great career choice. But that should be the reason you go to work at the bank. If you think you want to work in any field of work, then try to get experience in that field of work, or at least on the periphery of that field, so like a related industry. So I think that's my advice to interns. You should always be doing an internship. I made sure that I was always doing that when I was in college, and just did that for 4 years, so that when I graduated, I had 4 years of experience in the music business, working at retail, working at this radio station that had a really high profile. And by the way, I didn't have an offer from a record label at that time with all that hard work, but I did have it did lead me to a job at the Gavin Report, even though it was part-time. But, I made a job for myself at the Gavin Report. That's the other thing. I created a position that didn't even exist. I looked around and went, where's the void? Aha, here's the void. I'm going to get in there. And, I could see that nobody was doing a weekly chart. So I said there's a need, and I knew there was a need for that from talking to people, right? So that's it. I think that the practical experience is critical. But I think the education is very important as well. I think you want the 1-2 punch. Big advocate of doing both the practical experience and quality education. I think it's important. I think a lot of the things I learned in college come back to me, maybe not even always directly, but looking back, I wouldn't have foregone that. Most labels, the marketing is considered, all the promotion of the project, right? You sort of have two major areas: A&R, which is the acquisition and acquiring talent, and then marketing, which is getting the music out there, right? Promoting it, publicizing it, and selling it. All those things, I think, fall under that umbrella. So, what you have at most companies is you have departments. As I was sort of saying before, you have a sales department, you have a new media department, you have a radio promotion department, publicity, touring, advertising, things of that nature. And then every company is a little bit different, but most have what they'll call what I would call marketing director, who would be, and that's what I do here, is oversee the whole project, and I'm, and then, you would have a number of people assigned different artists, so they would sort of the go-to person for that project, the hub, so to speak. I sort of see my job, as I said at the beginning, is to make shit happen, and that includes sort of making sure the important things are not falling through the cracks. That's
great.
And being there, interface with the managers. We're usually, we're certainly one of the managers, if not the manager's, primary contact where they'll go to. They deal with all the departments directly, of course, but then they'll also come to us as well. We're sort of like an internal advocate inside the company on their behalf. But you have to also, you can't lose sight of that you work for the company and that you're a team player either. So, that's the art of doing this job, is looking out for your artist's interests. But, I always feel like looking out for my artist's interests is making sure that the credibility of the artists I work with is not diminished even within the company either, So what I mean by that is, I think if you're good at what I do, you're not just going out and continually asking everything from everybody, all at full speed, all the time for your artists. You're being smart about it and selective about it, and because, it's not good for your artist, and doing that in conjunction with the manager and in many cases the artists themselves. No matter what you do, whether you're a musician or you're a fine artist or a writer, I don't know, whatever, or an inventor, you create something, then you got to take it to the marketplace, no matter what you do or make or whatever your passion is, you need somebody to do that. Whether you need a record label per se, or a team of consultants. You can try to do it all yourself, and I think when you're starting off, you can. I've worked with artists who have done it all themselves when they were just starting out. It all, you know what? It all boils down to what your goals are. What do you want to do? What are you trying to achieve? Is this a hobby that you're just, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. Is this something that your career is I don't know, you're a professor by day, and then at night you like to make music, or is it the reverse of that, or is it a blend of the two? So it depends what your goals are. I think if you want to try to reach as many people as possible, to expose as many people as you can to what you're doing, I think that a major label makes sense for you. If that's not a goal of yours, then it might not be the right match. To try to achieve, as much exposure of your art as possible. For some people, that's really important. For others, it's not. So I think you need to know what you want. That's the first thing, and then it's a matter of, is it the right match and the right fit.
What makes a label the right match?
Well, I think having the same values and the same goals. Are the people trustworthy? Are they going to follow through on what they say they're going to do? What's their level of expertise? What's their level of work ethic? Do they understand what you're doing? Do they really understand the project? I think that's really important. And most importantly, do they have a passion for it? Are there people there that really are excited about what you're making? I think those are the most important things for making a fit.
Or is there a downside to working with a major record label?
There's downsides to everything in life. So I think it's just the inverse of everything I just said. If somebody, I wouldn't look at it as a downside to a major label. I'd just say, is there a downside to any fit? Does that person understand what you're trying to achieve? Do they have the same values? Do they have the same goals? I think it's of course there is. There's a downside to anybody you choose to enter into a working relationship with. It's a matter of finding the right fit. I think you're just going to continue to see more fragmentation, and I think it's going to be more micro marketing, and then I think the art will be knowing when to shift out of micro marketing into more of a mass marketing. I mean, that's one of the things we pride ourselves. Well, sort of sense in trying to build a story, let's say locally in a market, and then having a sense, and knowing, how to read the tea leaves, so to speak, of when it's ready to shift it into a mass media, and then you're going for national TV or national radio. And one of the most important things I think of any marketing endeavor is timing. And so I think you have to really. It's one of the things I think we pride ourselves on is having a good sense of timing things. And it's. But it's not a science; it's an art, and imperfect art. We're not perfect at it, but I think that's really that's where I think it's going to go. I think it's going to go more fragmented. I think it's going to be more complex and more efficient. I think efficiency is going to be the key, and so that there may be more outlets and more tools you need to create, but maybe you need to not approach each one on such a grand scale. But that won't be the case with everything. Sometimes you have to approach it with to make a statement. One of the things, I was on a panel. God, it was like a number of years ago, around 1999 or 2000, whatever. Around the time the internet sort of first big wave of it, where and everything was going, all the big .com boom, right, in the late 90s and around the year 2000, around the turn of the century there. And there was a feeling, I remember this feeling and everybody was going to work for a .com. It felt like it. Not everybody was, but it felt like everybody who was anybody was going to work for a .com or getting stock options, and and it was like a gold rush, right? Or it was like tulip mania in Holland or something. I mean, it was nuts. And I remember that feeling like, geez, am I missing the boat by not going to work for a .com, like staying at a record label? And I remember I was on a panel at Web Noise around that time. Actually, I remember specifically. It was in November 1999. And, I was like one of the only major label people at this panel, and I might as well have had a big bullseye on my forehead. And but the one thing that really stuck with me that I said at that convention was that, and it applies today, whatever it is, 7 years later, almost, not quite 6 years later, and I think it'll apply 6 years and 20 years from now, is I think there are some constants in the entertainment business, which, at the end of the day, it's going to always boil down to great music, You can polish it all you want, and you can put all the spin on it you want, and you can hype it up all you want, but if it's not great, people are going to notice it, And I mean, I'm just coming off of this really gratifying run off of this Green Day, American Idiot project. And you know what? It's like, man, it's all about that record, It's, hits are made in the studio. And I think that the constants that will always be there will be great A&R and great marketing differentiation. You have to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, and I think those are really, and that's no trade secret, But I think there was sort of this feeling like, major labels are keeping art back. And that's why I said I should have had a bullseye on my head, we've been the gatekeepers holding the music back, and I think, the only thing that holds great music back is great marketing, is great music and great differentiation in the marketplace. And when I say differentiation, I mean exposure as well. So I think that's where it's going. I think we're going to be even more reliant on great content, and I think even more reliant on greater marketing differentiation, because as you have more avenues of outlets, people still, they're people. They only have so much time. The internet doesn't increase the clock beyond 24 hours in a day, and people's attention span and how much time they have, And so, and the internet doesn't make music great, or movies great, or books great, whatever you make, But the internet does have a profound impact on things, and it's going to become even greater. And I think it will drive this fragmentation further, and it will have very profound effects on how it already has and is, and and what we're working on here is adjusting to that, and we're going to all have to do it even greater. It's going to be even greater down the road, And I think you'll see business models change dramatically, many years from now. I think that'll take time. They don't change overnight, but it's just inevitable, So I think it's an exciting time. Well, it depends what you're trying to achieve, actually. If you just want to be a pure artist, then I think it's just just listening to the muse inside of you, and blocking everything else out, frankly. I look at somebody like Captain Beefheart, who I've always respected as one of the most amazing artists, and I've just always felt like he never, or Don Van Vliet, as he's also called, I don't think he's ever really cared about commercial success. I think he just created pure art. What inspired him and drove him, I don't know. I don't know the guy, but I look at him and I think of him as a successful artist, tremendously successful. and we can all name other artists like that we can think of. So that's one thing that I see, and then I think if your goal is to be a commercially successful artist, which I think is different. Which, by the way, I don't think there's black or white. You can be there's shades, and then there's a million shades of gray in between, right? But just to sort of take two extremes, I think what it takes to be commercially successful is and a lot of these also apply to just artistically successful too. A tremendous dedication to your art. I mean, that's clear. That's obvious. That's the most important thing. Everything else follows that in either case. And I think and I think just the dedication, and I think with commercially successful, I think you need to really be ambitious. You have to really want to be commercially successful, because if you're not, and let's say you just happen to fall upon it, then it doesn't feel comfortable. It feels weird and uncomfortable, and then you feel like people are pushing you into doing things you don't want to do, and they're bugging you to go on a TV show, and you don't want to do that. And which is not to say you can be commercially ambitious and people can be bugging you to do TV shows that don't make sense for you. That's fair enough too. But I think you've got to be ambitious, and you've really got to be dedicated to what you're doing. And I think that's what it takes. You've really, because you're going to meet a lot of adversity, and you've got to have something that's going to drive you through that, and even the most successful artists, that we can think of, they all encounter tremendous adversity in their careers at all levels, even at their highest levels, because, when you reach a high level of quote unquote commercial success, well, then you have all those pressures of trying to maintain that success, and you've got to be able to figure out a way for yourself of how you're going to deal with that. Maybe it's to not care about it anymore, That's okay. That's up to you. That's your choice. But I think it's if you want to be successful commercially, you've got to be driven. And the other thing that I think is really important for an artist to be commercially successful is to always be very focused on your fan. I think that's the common thread I always see with a successful artist. They're always focused on everything that they're doing. They're always thinking in the back of their mind, how is my fan going to feel about this? What is my fan going to think about that? I don't mean to say that they sort of manipulatively market themselves, go out and do a market survey and think, well, what would my fan like? And then they go do that. That's not what I mean. But I think they think about like, well, if I go on that TV show, are my fans going to think like I'm lame? Or are they going to think that that's cool? Or are they just not going to care? But they sort of think that through.